welcome you to this important webinar titled Research Communication and Scholarship Opportunities. And we'll be starting right away with the first speaker, and that is Professor Velevan. You know, he'll be sharing, which is very important for us, effective writing and communication of research findings in peer-reviewed journals. That is what Professor Velevan will be sharing with us. And yeah, before he starts, I would love to read his his biography, his humble biography, or his humble CV. So Professor Dr. Tirumai Salami Velevan is a professor, faculty and group leader at the Institute of Tropical Medicine, University of Tübingen, Germany. He is the founder and director of Vietnamese-German Center for Medical Research, that is VG Care, in Hanoi, Vietnam. The center is supported by funding. The center is supported by funding agencies such as BMBF and DAD in Germany, as well as other international pharmaceutical companies and universities. Professor Velevan is the scientific coordinator of the Foundation Congolese pour la Charité Médicale Brazzaville, Republic of Congo. He holds a visiting professorship at Vietnam Military Medical University, Hanoi, Vietnam, a visiting professorship at the Faculty of Medicine of Day Tan University, Da Nang, Vietnam, and an honorary professor at the 108 Institute of Clinical and Pharmaceutical Sciences, Hanoi. Professor Velevan is a member of the Pan-African Network for Rapid Research Response and Preparedness for Infectious Disease Epidemic Consortium, Pandora IDNet, and the Central African Network on Tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS, and Malaria, that is CANTAM, a network of excellence to develop clinical research capacity supported by the European and Developing Countries Clinical Trial Partnership. This network represents three European countries, namely Italy, United Kingdom, Germany, and 9 African countries, including the Republic of Congo, Sierra Leone, Tanzania, Zambia, Nigeria, Gabon, Ghana, Sudan, and Uganda. The consortium is well networked with African CDC and WHO, and has been involved in building capacity to handle emerging and re-emerging infectious diseases. You'll agree with me that the young man is full of experience. Okay, Professor Velevan coordinates projects on clinical trials, genetic epidemiology, antimicrobial resistance, and diagnosis. Okay, so this is, one of the things he'll be sharing with us today is because he has published more than 125 scientific articles in peer-reviewed journals, and I know he's just starting, with a cumulative impact factor of greater than 500 with an H index of 26. Okay, he's a member of the editorial board of Nature Scientific Reports, BMC Medical Genetics, and Tropical Medicine and International Health. So, because of this, I'm confident that you'll be able to write. Okay? So, to repeat that, is a member of the editorial board of Nature Scientific Report, BMC Medical Genetics, and Tropical Medicine and International Health, and on the review board of international agencies such as NAFOSTED EU and the national agencies such as DAD. Okay, he's married and blessed with 2 beautiful children. So I'm very happy this morning to welcome my friend, and we've been a partner for quite some time now. Professor Dr. Velevan to give us the hint, on how to effectively communicate our research, and then also to be able to publish in a very good review journals, just like the ones you are editorial board on. So, Professor Velevan, over to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a wonderful compilation of a biography, I would say. Good morning, everyone, participants, colleagues, my friends, distinguished scientists, lecturers all over the African setting, if I could say that. And I'm going to share my screen from now. Let me try this first. All right. All right. I hope maybe may I ask the moderator if you guys could see the screen? Professor Ojurombe, is it okay?
Okay, yeah, the screen is fine, but maybe you can make it bigger instead of having two. We're having two slides. Maybe we can have one at a time so that.
Okay. I will use the slideshow.
Okay. Good. I think we are good now.
I don't see anything in my screen. I'm sorry.
Okay, maybe.
All right. Just give me a second. Sorry, guys.
This is nice.
Just give me a second, please. Is it all good now?
Yeah, it's okay if that is convenient. It's fine.
All right, perfect, guys. Thank you very much again for wonderful time that we will spend together for the next an hour or so. Normally, I do this as a workshop for a day. Since the time slot is little low, I'm trying my best to keep it as precise as possible. And I would love to hear some feedbacks, but also would be glad to take any of your questions at the end of my presentation. So the objective, as the title says, communicating science, this will be an introduction to scientific writing, publishing, focused specifically for peer-reviewed academic journals. I think many of you are in the academic field and everyone wish to communicate your results, what you have observed in your experiments to a global community or a research community or to a wider audience. So the main objective of this talk is taking you through the different processes, what things you should consider, what things you should avoid, what kind of mistakes that you might able to mitigate before submitting a journal or to respond to a reviewer, and all different processes during the submission, from the submission until the publication. I think for many of us, task of writing and research article is time consuming. Even with a groundbreaking research, unless the article is not rightly or appropriately written, at the best, the publication of your article will be delayed. In the worst case scenario, it will never be published. As I said, the aim is to provide an overview how to write a well-structured research article towards a peer-reviewed journal for a publication. As we say, we have much more motivation to publish. Many of us different motivation. Why do we want to publish an article? And the motivation differs from individual to individual. As I list all this across 100%, that we would love to disseminate the results that we observe. Partially, ego plays a role in visibility of your research. 10% feel that it may help me with my career prospects. The 10%, obviously, it's always intertwined, that the good publications always intertwine with improved funding measures. And at times, people publish an article to protect a patent. When we publish an article, we never imagine or consider two types of behaviors between us. One, I call that as author's behavior. Then the other, I call it as a reader's behavior. Both are independent to each other. If we go through into an author's behavior, the author wishes to publish more. He loves to have a peer review. He chooses a journal, crucial journal, and he wants to widely disseminate the research findings. Therefore, I would say authors are journal focused, with a predominant number of authors want to disseminate the results in peer reviewed journals. Whereas readers, like me or like you, we want to have an integrated system, because you don't want to waste time in browsing as many as articles. So therefore, browsing is crucial, because the quality of information that you retrieve during the browsing is important, and you want to read less, and on the readers are always article focused. Let me give you an example. Let's say if you want to find a term of, let's say, malaria in pregnancy in Nigeria, you're just going to Google it, or you're going to search it in PubMed, and what you are going to do is you will basically scroll through only a maximum of 2 to 3 pages. You're not going to scroll through 1,000 pages that are listed in the databases from Google or from PubMed. Therefore, the readers want to reduce their browsing time, but nevertheless, they would love to pick only those information which has higher quality. So the quality of information in the journal is very, very important for a reader. As I said, the reader's priorities, the quality articles, ease of access, convenient format. They would like to have clustering knowledge, linking all different information in one paper or 2 papers or 3 papers. They would love to read 3 or 4 papers, but they cannot read 400 papers. So it would be interesting to accumulate the knowledge in one given article on a specified topic. And obviously, they would love to have access to these articles, maybe an open access article, low or no cost, and the article should speak for itself related to an up-to-date information. So in the next few minutes, I will go through all these different aspects, key elements in publishing, ethical issues, style and language, structure of a paper, what are the different components of an article, and how does an article submission takes place, and how you may choose a journal, and how does this being handled as an editor, and how a peer review process goes through behind the scenes in a journal office, where the editors have a thorough look at your article based on the quality and quantity of information that you have provided to the journal. Let me start with the ethical issues. The ethical issue starts with a wide range of aspects, starting from disclosure of conflict of interest. Maybe one institution has a conflict of interest with another institution. Maybe they are doing similar research, but nevertheless, this has to be disclosed. Maybe one author is affiliated to 2 different institutions. This has to be disclosed. And any given acknowledgement of funding resources has to be very clearly mentioned along with the grant numbers. And number 3, in terms of any clinical research studies, you should be able to provide the reader an accurate and precise information on the independent ethics approval, that you have received from an organization based on Helsinki declarations. And more importantly, we always mention that informed written consent or assent has been received from different individuals, but this has to be documented these days. As these days, many journals request for raw data, or they follow certain PRISM or other guidelines to secure that the things are done right and appropriate. And in terms of image manipulation guidelines, this is also a strict thing that you should adhere to, and I strongly recommend many of the authors to strictly stick with this image regulations or guidelines. Normally, as an editor, if you do any manipulation of your gel picture or your PDF image or your fax image or any given thing, we could easily able to find it out from our online tools that we have been provided with. So the reviewers can clearly see or pick things like cut, copy, paste, including the plagiarisms, which I will come back to you guys in a few more minutes when I show through the editorial system how it works. And for health sciences, like you have a clinical trial, the clinical trials has to be registered in the central registry. As I said, the institutional reviewer board approval and many different aspects needs to be addressed, and in particular has to be well described in the article. Then one major aspect we always see is the style and language. Always, please, I recommend the authors to read the author guidelines of the journal. Some journals do not use like we, our study, we have found, we observed, you know, like more precise with personal touch. Nevertheless, it should be more neutral. This also happens because few authors write an article keeping a specific journal in mind, but nevertheless, many of us write an article, then adapt it and fit to the style of a journal. Then we choose the journal of choice. So if we choose the journal of choice, then please read the author guidelines, which clearly states how the terminologies and how you should address a result, like I have described it before. The main objective is to report your findings and conclusions clearly and concisely as much as possible. There are plentiful of challenges. I would say bad writing is a drain on productivity, as George Bernhoff said. Scientific English is also a foreign language for native speakers. It doesn't mean that an English native speaker can write a good article. A scientific English is completely a foreign language for everyone. Always keep in mind the clarity of language is very important, not the elegance or the style. Well, I can give you a very simple example. Let me say, okay, I have my dinner, I'm fine with my dinner, and I say, do you want to have more? I would say, no, thanks, I'm not hungry. This would be my way of clarity where I would say. Rather, if you ask an Australian, he would say, I had an elegant sufficiency, where many of us do not understand what does he want. He needs more food or he doesn't need more food. Yeah, I had an elegant sufficiency. Yeah, you see, the clarity of language to the readers is very, very important. Always keep in mind when you write an article, please erase the memory of what you have written. This is also very important because many of us read through the same text for ages, for many days, and we will never find any mistakes that we have committed. Rather, I suggest print it out, read the text loud, then you see it. Because you will find a lot of mistakes every time when you read it loud, because your eyes are well connected to the screen and your mind is reading the article, and you will never find any mistakes The reason is your mind has adapted because it skips to the next line or the next sentence because you know what is in the next statement. Therefore, I strongly recommend print the article and read it and edit it then and there. There is also a repetition of large chunk. This can also be clearly be identified. Without your knowledge, you will be writing the same story, same methods, same in the results part, same in the methodological part, also in the interaction. This can be avoided only when you can read it loud, when you print it out, and you sit it in a cool place and read it loud, and you will find for yourself a large amount of junk can be omitted or deleted as well. This is some examples for like addressing to an editor. Please make sure when you prepare a letter to an editor, when submitting an article, please make sure the language is written right. Because although your article is clearly good enough or well written, it doesn't matter, but the editor is going to look at the letter what you have written to him. Thereby, it gives him an impression how good this article might be. Please avoid typos and technical glitches as much as I could. Like there are some examples like you see, dear sir, or madam, it becomes madman. Yeah, and also write it very politely, more professionally. You cannot write something like, hello, I'm just wondering if you're still offering this position or if you're reviewing my article. Yeah, try to be a bit polite. And so, dear editor, thank you for the massage. I look forward to receive it in due course. What does this mean? Yeah, please avoid as much as messages or as much as typos and technical glitches that you could do by one good. Take your time to read it before you click the submitting option. No matter how smart you are, your mistakes can make or feel for the editor to look pretty stupid on the way you communicate. So this is a very good example how you may write or consider to write a letter to an editor. You can address the journal editor's name, give the title of the article. You can write the journal name with the month, date, and always address after doctor or after Mr. with the last name of the editor or the last name of the associate editor or any given person. This is a very clear way to communicate that I would like to submit a manuscript entitled. Okay, the reviewer or the editor clearly sees the name of the article, provide some author names or give the first author name and et al. To be considered for publication as what? As an original article or a brief communication or a case report or a research letter or a comment or a correspondence. Yeah. And never copy paste the abstract in the letter that you write to the editor. Please try to summarize the research problem with very layman terms. It's not scientific writing here, but in layman terms, summarize a research problem. Just focus on your main finding. Do not entitle or do not offer the editor to read or to provide him with all the findings that you found. Just give a key finding and how this particular key finding might have an implication or an impact to the society. This is what is very much needed than writing the whole abstract and providing the p-values and the percentages and so on and so forth. This is not of interest for us because this particular letter will provide or will allow or will guide us to consider whether I should even read the paper or not to read the paper. I would say read the abstract or not. I will come back to the abstract later. Style and language. As I said, if English is not your first language, find a native speaker to review it if possible, only if possible. Regardless of primary language, always ask your colleague or any good friend who has an experience in writing articles to have his comments or opinion or constructive suggestions that he would provide you with, that would definitely improve the quality of the paper, that reflects the quality of your results as well and your visibility per se. This is also a problem mostly you see in parts of Africa and Asia, and many of your colleagues will never share an article. The reason is that you find it really ridiculous that why should I share my results or findings to a colleague of mine who is sitting in my working bench next to me. Please avoid such personal problems and try to find someone, try to disseminate, try to share your research article, because this is going to help you. It's not going to, he's not going to stop you either. Yeah, please try to find as many as good colleagues or individuals with some background in publishing to have their feedback. These days you get a lot of, you have a lot of platforms. For example, ResearchGate, I get at least 6 or 7 requests from different colleagues where they want to have their comments or their suggestions for their article, so that you can approach through the ResearchGate. If you have written an article, you could approach with this written article with one of the colleagues or one of the individuals you know in ResearchGate, that I have prepared an article, I would like to have your opinion and comment or suggestions. Therefore, I would like to send this article, please provide me your feedback. This is a good option to do so if you may not find anyone in your vicinity who might be able to help you out. This is the other problem, like, I don't care what you think. It's always that it's my paper, it's my article, I am the best, my results are perfect, my paper is dynamic and stimulating. Always keep in mind, there is no reader. There are plentiful of readers for your article. You need readers for your article for the visibility of your article, which means how often your article is being cited, how often your article is being read, how often your results can be replicated, how often your methodologies can be reproduced. All this depends on the way how you project your article. I give you an example here. And since I do this as an interactive session, but nevertheless, I cannot do this now as an interactive session, but I just go through these lines. I want you guys to judge the guy named Peter. Judge him whether he is positive or negative, all right? Read this statement. Although Peter is a nice guy, he beats his dog. Although Peter is a nice guy, he beats his dog. Just keep in mind, beating dog is bad. How do you judge Peter? Basically, I judge Peter as, based on this statement, as nice guy or bad guy. Professor Ojurombe, can you have thumbs up or thumbs down? Positive or negative?
I would say this is negative because he beats his dog.
Okay, beating dog is bad. You are right. How can he beat his dog, even though he's a nice guy? Okay, let's go to the second statement. Although Peter beats his dog, he's a nice guy. How do you rate Peter?
Well, he's still beating his dog, although Peter beats his dog. Yeah.
No, although Peter beats his dog, he is a nice guy. You put an emphasis there. Yeah. Come to this statement. Peter is a nice guy, but he beats his dog. Peter beats his dog. He's a nice guy.
A nice guy.
Yeah. The thing is, here, nice guy beats his dog. There are two clauses. Yeah. Data are same, but we have different conclusions. It's always to put where you wish to emphasize your results at the end. Beating his dog is bad. Although Peter beats his dog, the negativity is surpassed. He is a nice guy. Yeah? This is where you put your emphasis. So placement influences a reader. All right. I'll give you another example. How can you swing your judgment by length? Peter is a good husband, caring father, a good colleague, altogether a nice guy, even though he beats his dog. He's a good man, good father. So you put an emphasis, good husband, caring father, good colleague, nice guy, although he beats his dog. It's a smaller thing because you give an emphasis of he's a good man in different perspectives or in different angles. Even though he beats his dog, you can also write it like this. Peter is a good husband, caring father, and a good colleague, and altogether a nice guy. Length always adds to the message, and this makes a difference. Yep. So placement of the main class and subordinate class is very, very important. And especially if you want to emphasize a result, although it is negative, although these findings doesn't look in accordance with other studies, such studies are further warranted in terms of surveillance of a specific disease in a given endemic region over many different years, you know, so things like this. So length adds to the message and makes a difference. Then you have the other problem of using semantics. This is what I also see most often from authors from Africa, especially from East Africa, where they use elegant words where I even do not understand what he wished to confess in the article. So semantics is basically a meaning of a word or a phrase or a sentence or a text. The word meanings are the same, but the relationship between the meaning is different. For example, the verb move means you can change a place, yeah, or move means also push, move means also pull, move means also I can carry, yeah. But you have to use the word move in an appropriate way, in an appropriate place, so that the reader can clearly understand whether it's place or push, pull, or carry. For other example is like bears live in the forest. You can also say by semantics, bears lives in the woods. Obviously, woods does mean forest, but definitely bears in the forest will live in the woods. Yeah, so try to avoid such semantics, make it very clear, precise, factual statements in a pragmatic representation where a reader could understand what you wish to translate to the reader. I go through the next section called structure of an article. Scientific writing over hundreds of years always follows a rigid structure, a format which has been developed over hundreds of years. A paper can be read at several levels. As I say, some people just read the title and they decide whether I should go and read an article. Some people will read the title and an abstract and then decide whether I should go deeper into the article. Others will read the paper irrespective of the title or an abstract. An article or a scientific article as an original article, there are different formats of articles like a brief report, research letter, research communications, short communications, comment correspondence, reviews, and so on and so forth. But I'm just focusing on an original article here. An original article comprises of these following sections: a title, authors, which means list of authors, followed by an abstract, which clearly describes what was done, keywords, I will come back to this individually in the next few slides. Introduction, which explains the problem. The methodological results or the methodology basically comes under methods, which explains how the data was collected or how the data was analyzed. Results describe what you have discovered or what you have observed. Discussion, discuss the implications of your results, followed by an acknowledgement, references, and in few journals, they may allow you for supplemental data for a reader who wish to have additional information on your study. When I stratify towards different components of the paper, author listing, I rather suggest to include only those authors who have made an intellectual contribution of your research. It doesn't mean that I have a friend of mine who needs a paper, please add his name. Well, I would not do so, or he has just helped me with shifting a sample from one lab to the other. I will not do so. You can acknowledge them, but not making them as a contributing author as such. Always include individuals who will publicly defend your data and conclusions. These are more or less like the authors who are the correspondence authors or the corresponding authors who is legally bound to answer to any given questions once this is once the article is published. Order the names of authors from varying disciplines. Sometimes you can be a corresponding author, but also a first author. Sometimes the corresponding, or most times the corresponding authors will always be at the end. What I wish to say is always keep all individuals who have in-depth contributed to your study. This can be a physician who had worked days and nights to collect samples, clinical information from a patient. This can be an individual who have ordered or organized the data and have run all the experiments, or those individuals who explicitly sat on the data to look at the results and analyze the data, or an individual who have enormously contributed in terms of shaping the research article. Then comes the title. The title is basically an advertisement for your article. This describes the content of the paper, very clear, very precise, which should basically include the keywords. As I said, it's an advertisement for the article. Please avoid using jargons or any given abbreviations in an article, in the article title, because search engines and indexing database depend on the accuracy of the title. Therefore, the keywords that you use in the title is predominantly useful in picking up your article much more in, like with more reads, basically to say. I definitely will write a title of an article only when I finish writing a discussion. And I put all the keywords and I will try to create or bridge all the keywords from all your results, from your findings, let's say malaria, pregnancy, Nigeria, surveillance, the gene, what you have looked into, in which children, with which population, maybe they are pregnant woman, like just try to put all the keywords and then try to get a conclusive title for your article, which also gives a message to the reader to read much more in detail the abstract and the article by far itself. I just give you an example here. Can you imagine RBE with HGD hard to swallow? I do not understand whether I will be able to read this article. Maybe it's curious for me to know what is BE, what is HGD, but nevertheless, I will never stumble upon an article like this until it has something to do even with my own research. unless until I know something, what is high GD means, what BE means. And also you see here below, the shorter the title, the higher the citations of the journals. Journals such as the high impact journals like New England Journal, Nature, Science, Cell, Lancet, Bled, PLOS, all have good citations because they have shorter titles with a precise way to represent the article. I would like to play a video in the next slide by two editors who are discussing how the title should be.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Kinnan. I am the Assistant Managing Editor of Clinical Publications for the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. And I am joined today by Deborah Bowman. She is the Senior Managing Editor of Clinical Publications. And today we are going to talk a little bit about creating effective titles for your scientific publications. Deborah, you recently wrote an article about this for Editorial Office News. Can you just tell us a little bit about why a title is important?
Sure. A title is actually really important for your article because it's like the first advertisement, the first thing that a reader is going to see, and it's going to help him decide whether to click through to your full article. If an article is not open access, he won't even be able to see the rest of the article, and so your title and the abstract will help him decide whether to buy the article. So it's really important that the title be good and effective. Later on, if they're doing research and want to find your article again, they're going to be able to find it more quickly and more easily if you have an effective title to begin with. So if you have a good title, it's going to help you gain more citations, which is going to help an author's H index and G index, which measure author's productivity and his impact. So it's kind of like a personal impact factor, so which you should want. And speaking of impact factors, it also helps the journal. If your article is cited a lot, it helps the journal's impact factor. And believe me, editors know which articles have gotten a lot of citations and which help their impact factor. So when they see another article come through with your name on it, they're going to think, oh boy, good deal.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the elements then of an effective title?
Okay, studies have shown that shorter article titles are better. So you don't want your article title to take up the half of the first page. The sweet spot seems to be between 10 and 15 words. You should also put keywords in your title. So pick keywords out of your article and make sure that they're a part of your title so that researchers can find your article when they're looking for articles to cite, because they're going to search by keywords. You should avoid abbreviations and jargon because you want your article to be searchable, to be able to be found easily by people from all kind of disciplines, not just people in your field. I think every field has its own little pool of jargon, and the people within that field understand what it means. Like, you know, try to talk.
All right, I continue with this because the video goes for another 6 minutes. So you might have captured the message, what the editors have emphasized in terms of title. Let's move and proceed with the next part called the abstract. The abstract is basically a way where it often addresses the problem of or the hypothesis of your study and a short information about the methodology that you might have used to address the hypothesis and what is the results that you have observed, and a concluding statement what this might mean for the research community or to a broader audience. Abstract is very, very important because the title and abstract should stand on its own, because both are the advertisement for your article. Why I say is I normally write the abstract at the end so that it accurately reflects the content of the paper. very precise abstract. Not all the results needs to be in the abstract. Just capture or provide the readers only those results that are of predominant importance that might be useful for the readers as a take-home message. Abstract is basically a take-home message of your entire article. Only when I read an abstract, I would definitely make myself comfortable whether I should go or dive deep into the article or not. At times, these articles may not be accessible because of restricted access. Nevertheless, you may ask or you may force the readers to go and look deeper into your article, provided if your abstract is well written. I suggest most of the authors to consider to write the abstract at the end. Therefore, it accurately reflects the content of the article. Oops. The next one is introduction. The introduction should be always very clear. Clearly state the problem. Background is very, very important. The background which explains the problem. Why do you want to conduct such a research on this problem? A maximum of 3 to 4 paragraphs should be sufficient to address in the introduction. The first paragraph gives the complete picture about a common problem or a hypothesis. The second paragraph looks deeper into the background information on the problem, how this is going to be done, or providing readers what has been done in the past, and so on and so forth. And the last paragraph is going to provide the readers a clear message how you wish to take it forward to address the hypothesis. Summarize relevant research in the context of what you write. Also, make sure and emphasize how your work that you are undertaking or that you undertook differs from previously published article. Identify key questions that you are trying to answer. You may add this at the end of your introduction, as the aim of the study is to investigate point A, point B, point C, utilizing a big cohort or big study group of so on and so forth. Always describe the hypothesis, research questions, and experimental design, just the method, not the whole method as such. At the end of the introduction, just write 3 to 4 sentences at the end, providing the readers, which basically bridges to the next section of your article, which would be materials and methods. I would write the introduction, I would write basically the last paragraph first and the other things later. When you look into the methods, sometimes we feel how, although we are pretty good in doing the experiments, getting the samples, writing things, it may be a bit complicated. But the best thing is, you know the experiments and you have done the experiments. In order for authors who might have trouble to start writing an article, to get a flow or to get a feeling, I would suggest the authors to focus on the experimental part, because you know the most of it, and it adds 2 or 3 pages for you definitely. And you may see something that you have come out with in the methods. Then you may start writing the other sections of the article. So the method section should provide the reader enough details so that they can understand and replicate your research. Explain how you studied the problem, which procedures has been you followed, and always try to give it in a chronological form. If you have used a new methodology, You can explain this methodology in brief or in detail. Otherwise, just say as a method used by Ojurombe et al. And cite the article, rather repeating the same thing. Or you might have used a primer or probes or any kind of things that you might have taken from a different article. Rather than re-depicting it as a table, you may try to shorten it as described by Snunu et al. These primers and probes and appropriate conditions has been employed to address these experiments. Always include the frequency of observations, which means sample size like N, and what types of data. Maybe it could be an ordinal data, it could be a binomial data, it could be a continuous data like male, female, how many males were screened or females has been screened, what is the proportion of the male-female ratio or the age, and things like this. Be precise in describing measurements and include always a standard errors of measurement and research design limits. For example, if you do an ELISA, you always have an experimental design with a limit of detection or a specificity of this assay or a sensitivity of this assay. Always try to give readers as good as and as many as information in one given article, so that the reader tries to depend more on your article. Therefore, your article can much more be cited. Results. Try objectively present your findings and explain what was observed or found or discovered. Sometimes I often see the authors write the methodological part again in the results. You do not need to repeat the methodological part in the results. Be precise or make a section or a subheading where clearly state, okay, with this methodology, this is the finding. So you may say, okay, genotyping of these variants or ELISA of these things, like make a precise subheading to objectively present your findings. Always make a logical sequence of the tables and figures, which means it should be like it should follow in an ascending order, like table 1, table 2, table 3, rather than putting table 1 in a different place, figure 1 in a different place. So it should follow an order so that in the discussion, this can be discussed very clearly. And also when you have results and figures or illustrations, illustrations should have a very clear, brief description as a legend, providing the reader a sufficient information to know how the data was produced, what the abbreviations in the illustration does mean, a clear overview maybe of the statistics that you have used, if you have a statistical value, and things like this. All this has to be captured only if you have tables, figures, and any other additional illustrative images. Please keep all this to the end of your article, which means following the references, not integrating or building it in between in the results. Discussion and conclusion. Any given article should have a discussion followed by a very brief take-home message as a conclusion. Results are different, discussions are different. Do not repeat the results in the discussion. Clearly start your discussion with a very brief aim of your study, reason why we have started this study, and this is what we have ended up. Then start in a chronological form or in ascending form. You try to start discussing table 1, table 2, figure 1, figure 2, figure 3, like in an order. Indicate how the results relate to your expectations and to any given previous literature that has been cited previously, and how this research your research results have contributed to a broader scientific group. This is also other possible problem that I always find in many articles, that you try your best to discuss your conclusions or your discussions. or your results. Normally, you should try to discuss or conclude based on your results, but most often we fail to do this. The reason is we try to discuss someone's results from other publications, which basically deviates from what we want to give it back to the readers. Please try to discuss your results, not any other results. And always the editors as well as the reviewers would love to find a mistake in your article for when they review. Although the paper is written very good, very nice, this doesn't matter. Always they want to find some mistakes. Nevertheless, you can disclose yourself a bit the limitations of your study. Although the study has shown results has been very conclusive and providing a factual evidence and so on and so forth, nevertheless, further studies are warranted because of low sample size. Maybe you can outline few other next steps that might be needed to justify your findings. You know, this also gives the readers a good feeling, but also the reviewers a good feeling that you try to weigh your pros and cons, and you try to weigh your strengths, weaknesses of the article by yourself. So outline the next steps for your further study in the discussion as well as in the conclusion. References, there are different guidelines for different journals. So I would say avoid references that are difficult to find, especially the links or the websites or the web articles. Please try to avoid such things. Sometimes you could also cite reports from organizations such as World Health Organization or CDC or so. The journals have different formats for reference style, and this reference style has to be adapted to a specific journal. Sometimes we also realize that there are too many self-citations, because in references, when we start to look into, we start to cite our own articles. As an editor or as a reviewer, I would love to see an article with new references or recent references. This gives the reviewer how quick or how good you might have screened or looked into literature for yourself. The reviewer is doing a job to review an article. He himself will go and find if something is published in this regard to your hypothesis, or in regards even to your own country. So if you find an article which is published in 2018 and 2017, which basically mimics or similar to your results, when you have not cited such things, or maybe you do not have access to the citations, but still you have not cited, this is a very major pitfall. Normally, this is also other major problem that I see from articles from low and middle income countries, that articles come mostly with references 10 years backdated, not anything in the recent 5 or 6 years. So try to include as many as and as good as recent citations in your article. I will guide you through the next process called article submission. Select your journal carefully. Always, before choosing a journal, read the aims and scope of the journal. Think about your target audience. Be realistic of a chance being accepted in a journal. I would not definitely go to a bigger journal like New England Journal or Lancet, because I could self-evaluate the results for yourself and be motivated to a journal where such things could fly. Always follow the guidelines, and please make sure that it has to be submitted only one time to one journal. Your article has to be submitted only once, not multiple times to different journals, because as editors, we have a big database or a cloud where we could see the articles. We, even with different names, with different editors or different author names, we could easily find if this article has been submitted elsewhere. I will show you in a few minutes how this works. So the key determining factors are impact factor, reputation, access to the target audience, editorial standards, the speed of publication, the coverage in international, coverage. There are other marginal factors such as track record, quality of color, illustration, service elements, and so on and so forth. These days, you have so much of South African journal, Asian journal, African journal, tropical medicine, all different journals with an ISSN number, and you get bombarding emails from different editors who is sitting in China but publishing from USA to submit an article and to get it published. Please avoid all these journals. Please consider publishing an article in your journal with a minimum impact factor of 1. An impact factor of 1 is more good than impact with no impact factor or any impact factor less than 1. Please increase your visibility by choosing right and appropriate journals. I will guide you through this process. This is a normal process. Like once you submit an article, you receive a confirmation of receipt. Then you have an initial decision by the editor. But nevertheless, I would like to emphasize here on the paper submission itself, please make sure that you adapt to the guidelines of the journal. Like if it is 600 words abstract, 600 words as a short communication, 600 words, 100 words in abstract means 100 words or less than 100. 2,500 words as overall article size means 2,500 words. 3 figures means 3 figures. 5 tables means 5 tables, or 2 figures or 3 tables, or 3 figures or 2 tables means please stick with the guidelines, because this helps you to avoid time lapse, which means there is always a quality check which is initiated by a journal office, and this quality check looks for many different components, and you will submit an article today and you will have to wait for 3 weeks, and they will come back to you with a small problem. They say, oh, well, you have not included author contributions. You have not included a section called funding. You have not included a section called ethical clearance, or your abstract is supposed to be 100 words. It has been 120 words. You are expected to put only maximum of 2 tables and 3 figures. You have put 6 in total. You know, things like this has to be avoided and could be avoided, and you don't need to buy time. Basically, the whole process of the peer review takes at least 6 months from submission to be published online. If you may avoid all this technical and avoidable glitches, you may save time. So the quality check takes 3 weeks. Then you receive a confirmation that it's been submitted. After submission, what happens? It's been assigned to an editor, and the editor finds it, whether I should consider this to send it to review or should I reject it, whether it fits with the scope of the journal or I could reject it. And the editor is sitting for 3 to 4 weeks, because he is handling not one article, he is handling at least 10 to 20 articles per week. This does mean that editor is paid. No, the editors are not paid by the journal except for the handling editors. None of the associate editors, none of them are being paid, because this is just a job as an editor, is a kind of a honorary thing that you do for the scientific community, because he has other things to do. So the editor, you should try to convince the editor whether he should try to send it for review or to reject it. The editor decides now, okay, I decide to send it out for review. Then we would try to find as good as and as many as reviewers in the context of research what you have published. Sometimes you may suggest a few reviewers when you submit, but if you know these reviewers already, or if you have published these articles along with these previous reviewers, we could easily find that as a conflict of interest in the database, that such authors have proposed these reviewers, and these reviewers have published already together before, which means we will not send the article to the reviewers what you have proposed. We assign the reviewers then, and it will take, reviewers is also not being paid. Everyone wants to get reviewed their article, but none of them is willing to review an article. So it is getting more and more and more difficult to get good reviewers. This means that the reviewer keeps this email at bay for 3 to 4 weeks. We send an automatic message to respond in 14 days, 21 days, 28 days. If the reviewer has not accepted the invitation for 28 days, we should assign another batch or a set of new reviewers. All right, so now the time limit from submission to sending it for reviewers took already 1 month or 45 days. And now the reviewer gets his own time to review the article. It depends on the editor how much time I should allocate to the reviewer to review the article. Most times we do it for 14 days, maximum of 28 days to 1 month. If the reviewer have not responded in this time frame, then we have to send an automatic message to advise the reviewers, please, it's due to submit your review comments. Please try to do it as good as possible and as quick as possible. Then again, you have to buy time. The reviews are completed. Okay, and then the editors will take another 1 week to handle all the review comments from different papers to see whether I should ask the author to revise the manuscript, or I could say based on the reviews, I could reject the article, and the notification is sent to the author based on that, either to revise or to reject. The revisions has to be carried out in a deadline of 2 months to 3 months, depends on journal to journal. And then you receive a revised draft from the author, and it can be assigned again to the same reviewers. At times, these reviewers will decline to review it. Then this may go down to a new batch or a new set of reviewers, which will invite few more trouble. If you try to submit your article on time, this helps, because this may go to the same reviewer, or if the editor himself feels the questions raised by the reviewers has been appropriately addressed, then I would not send it out to review. Rather, I would accept, or I would send a notification to the author saying accept. Nevertheless, I will find some minor technical problems which could still be addressed in the proofs. So finally, it will be sent to the publisher. After the acceptance, the revisions will be checked. The illustrations has to be given in a good format file like a JPEG or a TIFF file with a specific specifications with 300 dpi and so on and so forth. And this is all time, which is a minimum of 6 months. Unless until your article is rightly written, following the guidelines of the journal, you may have to buy more time. Or if you have not addressed or revised your article precisely and clearly what the editors have asked you to do so, your article will still be rejected. I would give you a best example in the next slide. Rejection. When you get a rejection, don't panic. Keep the deadline for submission of a revised manuscript. Return the revised manuscript to the editor with a point-by-point response to the reviewer comments. Read the proof sent to the editor and ensure that everything is right. Complete and return the copyright form. Wait for the article to available online. If the manuscript is rejected, please, I request the authors to read the review comments of the editor as well as the reviewers, and please adhere or change what the reviewers have said before you resubmit this to another journal. Sometimes you see a rejection, you get rejected, although there is a review comments, you just surpass the review comments and you go for a new journal with the same draft in a different guided format for a different journal. Please don't do this. The reason why I say is, I will give you a very good example. This is an article which was submitted to Parasite and Vectors, application of microwave heat treatment in the DNA extraction of Plasmodium falciparum. This article came for review to me, and I have clearly mentioned in my review that this things has to be considered and these such aspects has to be adhered with a major revision. And the editor have rejected the article and it's been sent back to the authors. Now the authors come back again to another journal, microwave-based DNA extraction for Plasmodium falciparum, submitted to the journal called Parasite Journal. This article is being reassigned to me from a different journal, and I know that it was me who reviewed this article, and I'm very much surprised to see if the authors have adhered to my review comments. This is what I expect to see, as the authors clearly say that in conclusion, this is the first study using microwave heat treatment, which is simple and rapid, promising alternative method to detect small amounts of Plasmodium falciparum. As a reviewer and also as a researcher, I know that it was me who have published such a methodology in 2014, and this is why such an article was allowed to handle by me. And still the authors claim that this was the first study, and I'm requesting the authors to cite the articles which has been previously published, even giving hints and providing the IDs. Nevertheless, I don't disclose who the reviewer is. Nevertheless, it comes back again with the same way, in the same fashion, coming back to the Parasite Journal. And I don't need to do much things. I just copy my review comments, what was given for the Parasite and Vectors, and I'm going to send this back to the same journal. The editor of the journal rejected the article again. Then the authors submit the same article again to a journal called Tropical Medicine. The same title, same thing, same story. Again, it comes to me for review. You see, for 3 journals, how long it might have took. It took a minimum of 4 months for 3 journals, which means they have lost at least 1 year in publishing an article, provided if they would have addressed the reviewer comments when they have looked into the first review comment from the Parasite and Vectors. And this time I was really feeling pity for the reviewers, for the authors, and I have clearly spoke to the editor and made my changes clearly as a reproducible method for extraction of Plasmodium falciparum, and I have edited the draft and send it back to the authors. And now this article is finally being published. Yeah. So this is what this is a very good example what I could see. Although I never know who the author is.
Well, Professor Velevan.
Yep.
Yeah. Your time is gradually winding down.
Yep, I'm almost done. I'm almost done.
Good.
Yeah, I think this was my last slide. So just keep asking your question. Does the abstract include a precise hypothesis and a take-home message? How does the introduction relate to the study and complements the hypothesis? Are there methods sufficient to prove or disprove your hypothesis? Is it an appropriate and right statistic used? Is the study a valuable contribution to research? Try to address all these questions and all will be good. What I will show you in the next 3 minutes, I may need 3 to 4 minutes and then I'm done. So this is my last slide. This was my last slide. What I will show you quickly is, So you see in this image that you see a lot of articles which I handled. For example, here you see this is an article from Voldale Simon Voluntalia, MD, PhD. It's accepted. Maybe this may be of interest. So here what I see is authenticate results, which means we can clearly see we can clearly see how much of your article has a similarity with other articles, which means a plagiarism check can be done in this way. And more importantly, we can also see that this author has published.
I think you need to put it in slideshow.
Ah, really?
Yep.
I think I cannot do it, or maybe I make it a bit bigger.
All right. Just go on then.
So I think that's what.
Don't worry, just go on.
Each and every word of the draft which has been submitted goes through the plagiarism check, and we can clearly see where this particular statement has been picked up, or you have copy paste. Many of the copy paste can be seen directly when you submit an article. So this gives first impression, is the article is well written or well copied. Then the second one is we can also see sometimes often that the authors publish the same study in 2 different journals in 2 different ways. We can also see the whole aspects of this author has published article with which different collaborators on which different topics. Yeah, so this all we can also find it out. For other example is so let's say this is a study for viral clearance after early corticosteroid treatment in patients with moderate and severe COVID-19. So I'm the editor for this. Now I have to find a list of reviewers to send it out. So I just go to the reviewers. I have already assigned 2 of those reviewers. Nevertheless, I can start searching for reviewers with the title, with their names and the abstract. And I could clearly say I would like to look at reviewers who have published 1 to 10 articles in the last 10 years on this particular field. So the database from Nature Scientific Reports is going to give me a list of potential reviewers who I can get in touch with or to assign these to them. And it's in the interest of the readers, sorry, it's in the interest of the reviewers whether they would like to take up this assignment or not. So this is an example. What you see is reviewer suggestions for this topic, these different individuals, and so on and so forth.
So Professor Velevan, I think your screen has frozen or is not sharing again. I think that is the problem. The screen is not sharing. We can, maybe you stop the screen sharing and do it again.
Okay. What do you guys see now?
Yeah. It's fine now. It's fine now.
So the one, what you see is the authenticate, right?
Yeah.
So this is the plagiarism check, what we see from where you have copy pasted things. And here it gives you the similarity index and so on and so forth. This is for the journal BMC, Infectious Diseases and Medical Genetics. And now I will share the other screen. So You see this now?
Yep.
So this is for scientific reports. So I'm just trying to see for this title where I've been assigned to assign a reviewer. So I search a reviewer. So it gives me a list of reviewers who have published in this particular field with a clear keywords that I could assign this reviewer. For example, what I do is, let's say I say add to short list. That's there. Please select, good. That's fine. And then what I do is, you can also select reviewers based on the countries. Maybe if I want to have an expert review from Nigeria, then I can choose, okay, from Nigeria, I want to choose a list of reviewers. Anyway, it takes some time. All right, I think since we are pushing around with the time, I will just leave it here and I will keep the next 5 minutes for open questions. All right, Olu?
All right. Thank you very much for that beautiful presentation. Very important. Yeah, that we've learned one or two things. For me, it's been nice that it's very important for you to read. You know, this is very important to read out, to read loud your articles to yourself. You know, because most of the time, because you are the one that wrote it, and it's very easy for you to get used to what you think you have written, which is exactly not what is there. But because you have something in your head, or it's not what you have put down, or something like that. So it's important that you read aloud, you know, to yourself. Although I was expecting so many questions, were a lot of comments were made in the chat box. Everybody seems to want to, they want the presentation. We'll see how that can be made available. But one thing that someone asked about graphical abstracts. So maybe I will just ask you to explain this before you go. He said journals nowadays ask for graphical abstracts. Can you explain how to go about this?
Graphic, am I audible?
Yep.
A graphical abstract is just, it could be a video file, it could be a picture, or a visual equivalent of a written abstract. So basically what you write in your abstract should reflect in this image so that the reader can quickly gain an overview of your article. Let's say it's a mechanism that you have found, or a distribution. For example, you looked at the distribution of PFHR-P2 genes or some genes. Maybe you can put the Nigeria map and you can just put the distribution and so on and so forth. You know, like what you wish to say as a take-home message can be reflected as an illustration. So this is how a graphical abstract works. Over.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, because of time, we don't want to give people opportunity to ask questions. That's why we said from the beginning, please just type in your question so that the presenter can participate. I see someone saying he's raising up his hand. Please just send in as a text, a very short message. What questions do you want? And then that will be well. Okay, so if you have it, so that we can look at it. Said, I would like to ask, how credible is Bayer's list of pediatric journal and publisher? That's a question for you, Professor Velevan.
May you repeat the question? How credible is the
Bayer's list of pediatric journals?
I'm having a break in your voice.
Oh, okay. Let me see.
Okay, now it's pretty good. Go ahead. How credible is the
Beer's list of predatory journals. This Beer's list, I always see it also. Beer's list.
What does the Beer's list? Normally you have scholars list, or you have Thomson Reuters. You have this list.
Yeah, actually, there is this guy that compiles. He compiles the list of predatory journals over the years. Although he keeps changing the list every time if he finds out that a particular journal that he has listed is not predatory, or he keeps updating it. But I know that many scientists have faulted it. They've tried to challenge it. But I think to some extent, you have clearly set something that should guide, and that is make sure that the journal that you are picking has at least an impact factor. I think that's where to start from, and that's what the guy tried to use to compile the list. You know, look at people, just like you said, that sits in China, and they send, I mean, their address is in the US, and then you send in a paper today, and the next tomorrow you are given an acceptance, you know, of it. So, I mean, you will never find a journal with some level of impact factor doing that, because it takes a long time before your journal will get a very small, impact factor. Yeah. Okay.
All right. If there are no more questions or comments.
Okay, there's one question here again before you go. Clarification between similarities and plagiarism when plagiarism check is done. So he wants to know the difference between similarities and plagiarism. And then another question says, Prof said we should describe our type of data in the result, ages, sex distribution. But I think this is also important in results section. Will it be a repetition which we were asked to avoid? I think he's saying the same thing, because your result should be, I mean, your result. Okay, maybe you should talk about the first one, similarity and plagiarism.
Similarity is different from plagiarism. A best example is the sun rises in the east. Can you change it? We can't. Always you should say sun rises in the east. So this is similarity. The sun starts from the west and ends up in the east. You know, like plagiarism is something like you don't cite or refer an author's statement on a specific topic. Rather, you just copy paste it. Plagiarism is just, you can copy it, but you have to readdress or restructure the sentence in your own way. And nevertheless, you can restructure the way in its own way, but provide the reference where this statement came from. This is called a best practice to avoid plagiarism. Over.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me see, but I think maybe we can stop here, and then if there are other questions that okay, what factors should be considered when an author is contemplating fragmenting data into 2 articles? I would say, why would you want to fragment the data? That's a question. Said, what should you consider if you want to fragment a data into 2 articles? So I was thinking, do you have to fragment your data? Okay.
What is the need to fragment your data? Because this is the attitude of the author to have, you can put all the data in one good journal rather than to splitting into 2 poor journals, and neither the reader is reading the cumulative data, what you have published. Maybe he has stumbled upon only one of the article and he has never come across the other article. Maybe if you have put data together in one article and it goes to many eyes, this will be captured rather than splitting data into 2 different articles. And this is a kind of an attitude where it deals with from personally speaking. Yep, over.
All right, so thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. I think we can call it a day from your end, but I'm sure you also want to see what the others want to present in a little time. So I'm grateful once again to you, my good friend, Professor Velevan, for taking this time out to give us, and I'm sure more questions will come. As the questions are coming to me, I will throw them to you so that maybe you can answer it, and then I will throw it back to whoever. So once again, I want to thank you, for this beautiful presentation, and yeah, look forward to your coming again to Nigeria and to LAUTECH, and expanding our collaboration. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Professor Olushola Ojurombe, Professor Oluwinka, and all my colleagues and participants from LAUTECH. I hope you have a very productive time amidst the COVID-19, which will supersede or subside in the next few months based on my intuitions. But irrespective of all these happenings, we are all together to increase the critical mass needed for the African continent in terms of individual and independent capacities. I wish you all very good luck, and we stay in touch. Thank you very much.